Hi everyone, this is audap. Let's continue our game of Iwaihime on PC. Alright, so I did do some reading ahead on the next portion of the game, and it's not as bad as the portion that we had to skip. But I should probably clarify about the portion that we skipped. Probably by now, if you've been watching Iwaihime and you've been watching my playthrough of it, you are probably okay with the content in that. Meaning that if you are a horror fan, let's say you read Stephen King or Clive Barker or Dean Koontz or any of the more popular authors out there, then the material that we skipped in Iwaihime is not any worse than anything that you've ever read from any of those authors. So it's very uncomfortable what happens, and it's very horrible, but it is a horror. It is a horror novel. So that's why I'm really of two minds of it. I mean, I don't want to have to excise that portion of the story because it is very appropriate for this genre. And for the audience that likes this genre, horror novels, then you will not be offended by anything that happens in that portion of the game. However, because we're in a genre of video game, the bar for video games and their audiences, as far as streaming platforms are concerned, that bar is much lower, meaning that the perceived age of people that watch video game content is always perceived to be lower, and therefore the number of people that advertisers look for, or that the platform holders look for, is always going to be lower and more general audience. So, if you're reading a lot of Clive Barker, then maybe Coca-Cola is not going to want to advertise to that audience for whatever reason, right? I mean, I think Coca-Cola would be stupid because there's like millions of people out there, right? Who would say no to millions of people? But I think that's the real crux of the issue, is that it is okay in a horror novel sense that we have content which sort of pushes the edge and makes you uncomfortable and weird or kind of grotesque things happen. But as soon as we put that into a video game, now you can't assume that that audience is okay with that stuff. You have to, or at least platform holders, believe that that audience is now the same audience that watches, guys jumping off of roofs onto mattresses, or guys that sniff flavor packets from ramen, ramen packages. They assume that those same people are going to stick around and watch Iwaihime, and that the advertisers are going to go, oh gosh, I can't put my ads on Iwaihime because I assume that the guys who are watching this are also watching, guys poke each other's eyes out or trip each other. And they're not the same audiences at all, And I said, especially if you've been watching this and you've been sticking with this, you like the horror genre and you're okay with horror genre conventions and things that are horrible that happen. But Facebook gaming, Twitch, YouTube, none of those platform holders understand that an audience can be core and not be general, right? But be profitable. I think it's a thing that is very it's very telling, who platform holders are really beholden to, and that they will never really understand the platforms that they host. So I say that's unfortunate. I felt uncomfortable too, but I didn't feel any more uncomfortable reading and seeing the imagery, which actually there wasn't really any explicit imagery. But it isn't any worse than Dean Koontz, or or Stephen King. You know, I mean, if you've read any novels of any popular horror novel or horror novelist, then Iwaihime is nothing, right? The things that happen to the Immortal Princess, I mean, you know, you're disgusted, but worst things have ever happened in some of the most popular horror novels and most popular horror movies. So, I mean, that's my little piece on that. I really do suggest that folks pick up this game, and if you're a horror enthusiast, then you can enjoy that portion of the game, and I think it provides some additional insight, which unfortunately we're just going to have to miss. So, again, I apologize. I wish I could show you the whole thing. The problem is that our platform holders, you know, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, they don't understand the audience that would like that, and so they would rather just ban that content, period, because they don't know how to wrangle together, you know, the appropriate age restriction and verification, you know, that sort of thing. They'd rather just not deal with the problem, so they just don't host the content. So this is just slightly scrubbed, but I hope that we can still get most of the horror content, and not kind of past that line that platform holders think will watch this kind of stuff. You know, again, I don't think anybody that's watching Iwaihime is you know, is the primary audience that you know, these streaming platforms think they are. And you know, if they were smart and they had an adult verification system and they had an older audience out there, you know, us older folks buy a lot of product, and if we see an advertisement in a genre which is targeted for us, then, you know, we have the funds to buy that product, as opposed to you know, guys you know, chasing tin cans on moving cars. You know, acting like dogs, you know, in cat suits. You know, anybody who's watching that doesn't have an income, I mean, you know, that your advertising's lost to them. But for us, older folks, we have money, and we can spend money on stuff. And if you advertise on programming that is made for us, then you're going to catch our attention. And it may not be the same advertisers that are advertising, you know, Nerf guns, but it may be the same advertisers that advertise Doritos. No. That being said, let's continue.
好きすぎて。
The caterpillar human slithered my way and looked down as if it were about to crush me.
スズムンのこと家族に迎えたい。
She brought the sharp protrusion closer and closer to my chest. My mind had gone blank long ago. If I were to laugh, will all this just turn out to be one big practical joke? That thought helped me force an awkward smile onto my stunned face.
先輩、僕よくわからないです。何が
It took everything I had just to stand up and stagger away, let alone ask her that. But neither my face nor words could conceal the revulsion I felt. She must have felt hurt and angered.
だよね。こんな汚らわしい姿受け入れられないよね。でもね、私だってもう自分で自分がわけがわからないんだ。迎えたいの、家族にスズムンを芋虫ランドに迎えたい。全身にびっしり私と同じ毒々芋虫まだらん模様。 ズムンとお揃いの独特まだら模様したい。
I saw the tip of her tube oozing mucus tinged with a repulsive hue, and let out the shrillest scream of my life. I fell on all fours and started crawling away as fast as I could. I had to get out of there. If I didn't, and that thing got to me, I'd... So this really was a bad dream. Yes, this was all a bad dream. Hadn't I already known that from the start?
逃げられないよ。だってここは私の不思議の国。もうスズムンは私のものなんだよ。
Minobe laughed at my sad state as I pathetically clawed at the door. She threw her head back, took a deep, deep breath, and filled her cheeks. I screamed again when I felt long hair spray across me. No, it wasn't hair. It was like white floss. I understood. This was silk. Caterpillar silk. Minobe was shooting thin yet solid silk threads at me, trying to wrap me up like a cocoon. I couldn't break it no matter how much I struggled. I felt my body being constricted by the silk as I tried to resist.
怯えなくていいよ、スズムン。まあでも無理な話だよね。
先輩は何がしたいんですか？
スズムンにブルブルビクビクうずいて綺麗な独特模様が浮き出すコブ。スズムンの全身にくまなく全部に。スズムンの綺麗なところにも汚いところにも懐かしいところにも全部
そんなもので全身を刺されたら死んじゃいます。
結構痛いからね。でも下手に抵抗するとその方がかえって痛いよ。おとなしくしてた方がいいかな。でもね、進む。私は誰が家族でもいいわけじゃないの。そういうクズもいるだろうとは思うよ。家族が増やせれば誰でもいいっていうクズも。でも私はこれがとても神聖なちぎりにきっと違いないと思ってるから。大好きなスズムン以外の誰も考えなかったんだよ。
Taken at face value, her words were a beautiful confession of love that one should be beyond honored to receive. But who could believe a declaration like that when it was coming from a giant caterpillar binding you with silk?
スズメのこと初めて見た時から胸の中がついてた。私は一目惚れなんて少女漫画の中のことだけだと思ってたけれど、あるんだね、本当に。君を見て私はずっと恋に胸が苦しい夜を過ごしたんだよ。
僕を一目惚れしてくれたのはすごく嬉しいです。僕も先輩と話していて楽しかったし、一緒に過ごしてもっと一緒にいたいと思ったりもしました。でもだからこそ 相手の嫌がることなんてできないんじゃないですか。
こういう感情ってやっぱりけだものに通じるから重欲って言うんだろうね。大好きなスズムンだからこそ、スズムンの嫌がることなんてしたくないって気持ちもちろんあるよ。
じゃあ
でもね、そんなの関係なく大好きなスズムンを無理やり毒々芋虫にしてやりたいって、そういう気持ちも抑えられないくらいに湧いてくるの。変だよね、変だと思う。全身に管を突き立てられて、いかにブリブリと気持ち悪いコブを作られるのってすっごく辛いこと、それが分かってるはずなのに、それでもなおスズムンの全身を犯したい。私の汚らしいドロドロの管でブリブリとスズムンの全身を犯し尽くしたい。
Just when I thought I was finally getting through to her, her eyes glazed over, making it perfectly clear a sane conversation was far beyond her grasp. Just as she said, she was being controlled by carnal instinct and was completely lacking in reason. Humans were far from perfect. They all had desires that were powerless to stop: hunger, thirst, and lust for starters. There was no way Minobi could be reasoned with when enslaved by such emotions. All she wanted was one thing: to stab me with that tube all over and desecrate my body with those ghastly caterpillar spots.
スズムンのことが大好きだから、無理やりだけど無理やりじゃないの。スズムンの覚悟が終わるまで私は待っててあげるから。
She caressed my face with a bewitching smile, then stroked my body from head to toe with that slimy protrusion. All of a sudden, everything shook with a rumble. The teaspoons rang on the table. Minobi's face froze, and she looked around in confusion. There it was again, another rumble. It was stronger than the last one. Some dust fell from the ceiling. Minobi's face darkened.
何事ですか。
静かに。
Minobi pressed a finger to my lips and slithered to the door. She opened the door and went outside. That was the perfect chance to escape. But I couldn't break free of the silk no matter how hard I tried. However, I could still roll in it. I had to hide somewhere until Minobi came to her senses. I rolled and crawled like a caterpillar myself, aiming for the door, when there were several loud thumps, followed by the ground shaking. I could tell whatever was causing the shaking wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was the sound of a new terror, far beyond the likes of Minobe. Those tremors felt like a giant's footsteps. Just when I was a hair's breadth away from the exit, Minobe came back. She lifted me up and tossed me on the floor.
ごめんね、スズム。少しおとなしくしてて。ったく、あんな化け物、どこから。
Her face was stricken with worry. Minobe was more than enough of a monster herself at this point, yet here she was calling something else a monster. I couldn't doubt it any longer. These tremors were the sounds of a massive creature stomping about. Minobe locked the door, but that wouldn't do any good against something so gargantuan. She threw her head back, took another deep breath, and started spewing silk threads once again. She used it to block the door like a spider web. But that wasn't enough for her. She started creeping around the whole room. Before long, the whole room was covered in silk. As she did, the monster outside finally reached the door. The entire room shook with a shockwave unlike any before. But Minobi's threads were sturdy. The door didn't break, no matter how much the room rumbled or how much dust fell from the ceiling.
進むは私のもの。進むは私のもの。
Minobi repeated that like a mantra as she kept circling the room, covering it with even more silk. Eventually, all I could see was silk. It was like a blizzard had passed through the room. But Minobi just kept on going. She continued circling around until she eventually started creeping across the walls and ceiling. Everything turned into a pure white womb made of silk.
誰にも邪魔はさせない。邪魔はさせないよ。セズムは私のもの。私のものなんだから。
Just then, the fiercest tremor yet struck, knocking Minobi off the ceiling. And then I saw it. The sky, no, the ceiling, being torn and wrenched open by massive black claws. The ceiling was torn off. Splinters fell everywhere. With that, a gaping wide hole to the sky was revealed. A giant shadow stood against the purple sky, looking down on us. That monster was as big as a skyscraper. Disheveled black hair hung from its head like a willow tree, framed by two bent branches. Its razor-sharp claws lunged for me. Minobi knocked me aside and charged at the giant black arms.
セズムは渡さない。渡さない！
Though she was a giant caterpillar, Minobi was still the same size as a human. She wasn't even as tall as the monster's fist. It was clear who was at a disadvantage here.
この
The monster let out an earth-shattering howl and a moan. Minobi must have stabbed it with her tube. But all that did was anger the giant. It swiftly grabbed Minobi and wrapped its gargantuan hands around her. The monster carried her up into the sky as though she were just a doll.
この野郎！離せ！
I could hear Minobi's voice, high in the pitch-black sky. Before long, agony started seeping into her cries. All of a sudden, her shouts vanished right as the sound of a branch snapping rang out. And with that, something came dripping down from up above. They were crushed entrails, followed by Minobi's arms, torso, and head. It crashed right into the floor and rolled towards me. And though she'd been reduced to solely a head, Minobi was still conscious.
先輩。
はい。
A single tear leaked from Minobi's eye, and with that, her life came to an end. Suddenly, a thumb as thick as a log came down and squished her head flat like a quail egg. The giant hand picked me up next, taking me up to the sky. I felt like I was going up the first hill of a particularly tall roller coaster. Though I was scared out of my mind, I couldn't help but laugh my heart out. And when I reached the top of the sky, I saw the moon. The last moon I'd ever see. The last sight I ever saw in Wonderland. I woke up to find myself sweaty and staring at the ceiling, my body contorted in an odd position. I felt like I'd just had the worst nightmare of my life, one that defied any explanation. The details had been so clear just moments earlier, but with every blink and wipe of my forehead, they faded further and further away. I took another look at the ceiling. It was the same wooden ceiling I'd recently gotten used to. I got the impression that I couldn't calm down unless I'd made sure of that. Minobe had said dreams could be another reality, didn't she? What I felt was dissonance from that reality and not connecting to this one. But something like that couldn't possibly exist. That was a dream, and this was reality. I took a deep breath to calm down. I must have had that bizarre dream because I was conscious of the fact Minobe was sleeping over next door. That had to be it. The dream I'd only just been having. Minobe's arms, torso, and head all crushed and ripped to pieces. The dream connected to reality. The moonlight seeped into my room, revealing liberal splashes of blood painted all over. Scattered chunks of meat littered around. Among them included squashed arms, a severed torso, and just like in that dream, Minobe's crushed head lying right next to my pillow. I screamed at the top of my lungs and burst out of my room. I couldn't resist the fear engraved in my cells shouting at me to flee from the scene of her death. It was only when I got outside that I realized I had to call for help. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. Though I was panicking, another part of me calmly assessed that I would be the prime suspect here. I don't know what happened. I had nothing to do with it. I couldn't have killed her. After all, Minobe was in Kiko's room. There was no way she could be in mine. Then, how was I so sure that mutilated corpse strewn across my room was Minobe's? It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It couldn't be. I mean, there wasn't even a drop of blood on my hands. But all of that could wait. I had to call the police. I pounded on the door to apartment 201. My phone was in my room, but I'd be damned if I ever went back there. But perhaps because I'd been hitting it too hard. The door fell off its hinges. Just as I began worrying I'd broken it, the door fell into pitch black darkness. What? I didn't have any idea how, but there it was. Apartment 201 was a black space with nothing inside it. There was no sound of the door hitting the ground. It was simply swallowed into the bottomless darkness and faded without a noise. Almost like they'd only built the apartment complex halls and forgotten to build Kiko's apartment. It was only then I noticed what was wrong with the world. I was outside on the second floor of the complex. The complex doors, windows, walls, floors, and rails were all there. All of them were normal. All of them were there. But everything else was gone. The roads, telephone lines, street lights, houses lining the streets, all vanished without a trace. Everything apart from this apartment complex had been painted over with pure darkness. Only the dim shine of the fluorescent lamps illuminated this world. I believed that I'd returned from the world of nightmares to the real world. Wait, the real world? Just then, I heard footsteps approaching. Someone was heading up the staircase to this floor. That someone was the shadow of a dark girl. A shadow so dark, Not even the faintest light could illuminate it. A moment later, recognition came to me. That bizarre figure with long black hair and withered branches jutting out of their head had looked down on me in that nightmare world. Suddenly, something stuck out from within the shadow. It was a small Japanese doll that I'd seen somewhere before. Pale arms were holding it out from within the shadow. And with a plop, the doll's tiny head fell off. Its arms and torso broke apart and followed suit, scattering at the shadow's feet. With that, the pale hand stuck even further out, and a girl emerged from the shadow. I didn't mean that she was the one projecting the shadow. I meant she literally walked out from it. I knew her. She stepped towards me, trampling over the scattered doll, and spread her hands out as if to embrace me.
お前は私のもの。誰にも渡さない。
Both Kurakami and the female shadow spread out their arms and engulfed me. Oh, we got another title sequence? Okay. Did we get one for every chapter? Is it the same one? Oh no, this is different. Or is it? I don't really recall. It was like 2 days ago or 4 days ago or whatever. No, this seems different. Yeah, this must be about the next chapter, potentially. So there's gonna be a story for every girl in the game then? I don't know, it's such an interesting format.
Pika Pika Magic でみんなのお家をクリーンクリーン。お掃除プリンセスマジカルリリーが素敵な魔法でみんなをハッピーハッピーハッピー。お掃除の国のプリンセスマジカルリリーだよ。今日はこのお部屋にお友達がみんなで来てくれるの。ちょっぴり気になる男の子もいて、リリー心臓がはち切れちゃうよ。でもリリー、このお部屋に本当に友達が呼べるかな。無理だよね。あと1時間でみんなが来ちゃうよ。落ち着くにゃ。こんな時こそこれまでに覚えたお掃除魔法でお部屋をクリーンクリーンにするにゃ。上吉文化プラザのみんな、リリーに力を貸して。リリーちゃん、散らばったおもちゃを簡単にきれいに整頓できる魔法、前回習ったのをちゃんと覚えてる？リリーと一緒におさらいしちゃおう。マッチカ
felt everyone's eyes on me as I walked. I used to hate it, but not so much these days. Deep down, I wanted to wink at every last one of them, but sorry, school rules and all. It'd been a long time since I'd gone to the LCSE. I hadn't been over since the decision to add me to Flower High. Despite that, it didn't feel right that I'd only come back when I needed something from them, like today. Well, since I was dropping by, I had to make good use of the opportunity. The LCSE met in an empty classroom near the infirmary. At best, Minobi, Harumiya, and Miss Hinagata would be there. Huh? Was that a guy's voice just now? But I thought the LCSE didn't have any guys. I started to have the strangest feeling, like something new and wonderful was about to happen. Inside, two guys and the girls of the LCSE were sorting through goods for the rummage sale.
こんにちは。お久しぶりです。あ、リリアちゃん。おお、お久しぶりだね。お仕事相変わらず忙しい？おかげさまで日々の多忙を楽しんでいます。
One of the guys was looking at me with confusion, while the other's eyes had grown wide as saucers. We all stared at each other, clearly thinking, "Who are you?" But I could tell from the color of their uniforms that they were juniors. In other words, they were my upperclassmen. Time to turn up the manners, then.
布川さん、紹介するわ。我がシャチホコ部待望の男子部員の2人よ。はじめまして、先輩方。1年の布川リリアです。
リリアってクルスリリアちゃん？いやマジで、いや本当に
クルスってのは芸名なんだって。本名は布川リリアちゃん。
この学校に通ってるって噂は聞いたことあったけど、本当にいたなんて。うわっ、ブギブギ、ギャババーン。
勝田くんが壊れた。ひょっとしてクルスリリアの大ファンだったり？
お掃除プリンセスマジカルリリー、小学校の時ずっと見てたっす。俺リリアちゃんのずっとファンでした。握手してください。
I was very happy to hear he knew me. So I had to reward him for his enthusiasm.
ピカピカマジックでみんなのお家をクリンクリン。お掃除プリンセスマジカルリリーが素敵な魔法でみんなをハピハピハッピー。
He jumped up and down with excitement while making all sorts of bizarre noises. I used to think people like him were creepy and disrespectful, but eventually I realized it was because of people like him that I could shine on.
はじめまして、クルスリリアです。お兄ちゃんの名前なんていうの？
熱田夏也って言います。
夏代お兄ちゃんって言うんだ。素敵な名前だね。うわー、ナッチドン引くわ。厚田くんってリリアちゃんの大ファンだったんだね。
マジカルリリーが俺の名前を呼んでくれた。グレート。
He was practically foaming at the mouth with joy. I was so glad. It was always best to give these types what they wanted.
布川さんって芸能人なんだ。
知らない？ 昔テレビでやってたお掃除プリンセスマジカルリリーって。
ピカピカマジックでみんなのお家をクリンクリン。知らねえのかよ、鈴原。テレビはあんまり見ないから。Oh no! グレート鈴原たるものがマジカルリリーを知らないとは。アングレート。
I had a hard time dealing with people who didn't watch a lot of TV. But within each one of them lay a potential fan, and converting them required steady effort. Perfect. I'd pull out all the stops and make him fall for my charms.
こんにちは、お兄ちゃん。クルスリリアです。お兄ちゃんのお名前教えてほしいな。
鈴原鈴夢だよ。よろしくね、クルスさん。
The moment our eyes met, it was as though someone had turned the lights out on the whole world. The two of us were alone in a dark world full of falling black snow. Felt like we were the only ones there. I'd never felt this way meeting another person before. I took all I had to hide my bewilderment. But Susahara's bright smile never faded. Could he not see this world? Or was it because he could not see it?
君は誰？
I just told him my name was Lydia Kurusu. But what did he mean by that? Was it a philosophical question? Or was there malice behind it? However, his eyes bore no ill will. It was downright unnerving in this quiet world of black snow.
クルスリリアはお仕事の時の名前なの。学校では布川リリアって名前なんだ。
I tried matching his vibe to the best of my abilities, but the look on his face didn't change in the slightest. And for some reason that hurt me more than anything. No. Hold on. Why was I getting worked up over a single greeting?
布川が本名で、クルスは芸名なんです。紛らわしかったらリリアと呼んでいただけると嬉しいです、鈴原先輩。
分かったよ。
ありがとうございます。
君は不思議な子だね。
Those words were way beyond hurtful and were enough to make me feel downright insecure. Just who was this guy?
鈴原！なんでお前だけ下の名前で呼ぶことが許されてるんだよ！羨ましすぎる。俺もリリーたんのことリリアちゃんって呼びたい。
厚田先輩も私のことは気軽にリリアって呼んでくださいね。
リリアちゃん！
リリアンもお仕事とはいえいろんな輩の相手大変だね。ファンサービスも立派なお仕事ですので。リリアちゃんって可愛いよね。私もあんな女の子に生まれ変われたらな。
Alright, why don't we stop it there? This is audapostrophe. You've been watching Iwaihime on PC. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.